Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Heidi's house. This is your host, Queen Bee Heidi B. And today's featured guest is Emmaculate. I'm so excited to hear more about his house music journey. So, are you ready? Then let's go. So, here he is. Immaculate is in the house. Woohoo! Welcome,
Hello,
welcome,
hello.
welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's a true pleasure to have you joining into this little podcast that explores the global house music culture. And as you know, it's a little snapshot kind of interview session where I always ask from our featured guest a bit about their personal house music journey, their inspirations and background and so forth. So once
Okay.
again, truly a pleasure to have you joining in.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I appreciate you having me.
And without further ado, I will start with our first question, which is always the same for each of our guests.
Okay.
Define your own words. Who is Immaculate?
Ah, boy. Um, I think in a lot of ways I'm just a regular guy. I'm a dad and I'm a fiance. I'm a friend. I'm a brother. I'm a music nerd. I love music. I love learning. I love developing my craft in terms of musicianship, being a DJ, being a producer, being a mix engineer. So I'm just really a student, when it comes to music. I think that's the best way. I love diving into the history. I love watching music documentaries of all different genres. Like, I just love the art. I'm an artist child. My mother was an abstract artist as a profession. Actually, that piece right there was one of her pieces.
Oh, wow.
She passed
Wonderful.
away 14 years ago, but definitely was a huge influence on me. My dad is a musician. So I'm an artist child, music child, music nerd, I suppose you'd say.
So it truly runs in your veins, the
Yeah, I think
art and
so. Even I,
creativity.
I have I have one biological brother, and he's a musician and actually a
Oh,
production manager for Live Nation in Hong Kong. So like our whole family is just art and music.
wonderful, wonderful little synopsis of you put in your own words and just very beautifully said. Now, as you know, this podcast is focusing more or less on house music, but we do
Hmm.
know that you come from wide variety of musical backgrounds. You have been
Hmm.
involved with different genres of music in hip hop, more pop as well, and more.
Hmm.
So your palette for musical taste is very broad.
Hmm.
But if we start from the house music journey, um, what got you to house music in the first place?
Well, house music was my first love in terms of making me want to do music or making me want to learn how to DJ. Of course, when I was a kid, I loved different kinds of music and stuff that was popular, stuff that we had in the household and that sort of thing. But I was an athlete when I was a kid. I played baseball and American football every year from 8 years old until high school. And like, when I was around the age of 13, 14 is really when I really discovered house music, which I don't mind telling my age. That was 1988, 1989. And we had a teen dance club by where I lived. And we were just kids listening to the music, going to the teen dance club, learning how to dance, making up routines, and that sort of thing. And from that's what made me interested in wanting to learn how to DJ. Like I said, I had the musical influence of my family, but it was different genres of music. But at that time, when I was in like maybe eighth grade, that's about when I really remember falling in love with house music. And by my freshman year in high school, going into sophomore year, which was 1990, I was 15 years old, and that's when I officially started DJing.
Okay.
So, house music, I lived in a small city that's a part of the Chicago suburbs called Elgin. You know, Chicago is a very vast place where you have the city, but then you have all these surrounding small cities and towns that make up what we call Chicagoland. And so I grew up in the suburbs in Elgin, which we really had all the same stuff that the city had in terms of culture and music and everything. And so it was popular back then, you know, house music was huge. It was on the radio, you know. So, you know, it was a popular thing. And as a young, you know, teenager, that was just what I fell in love with. So that's what made me start DJing in the first place.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing on that because that would have been a question, what is of course certainly intriguing for our viewers as well. That what got you into DJing. Now,
Yeah,
if you think about the beginning steps in your house career, so to say,
yeah.
who would you say were the artists or producers that inspired you the most?
Well, my entry into house music was definitely like the Chicago producers. So, you know, when I first started, I had a small little collection of records that I started, but I didn't really, you know, I was just discovering, you know what I mean? And one of my best friends at the time, his older cousin was a DJ, but he had gotten in trouble and gotten himself locked up. And so we got a hold of his records. My friend brought over all of this guy's records, and it was really like a treasure trove of Chicago house music from the 80s that was really just a few years ahead of my time, you know, because 85, 86, I was 10, 11 years old. I didn't know yet, you know what I mean? But by the time I got to 15 years old, I was discovering all the stuff from the 80s. And so to answer your question, those artists were Larry Heard, Mr. Fingers, Future, which, you know, really are the pioneers of Acid House, DJ Pierre and Spank. Mike Dunn, definitely. Armando, Marshall Jefferson, Steve Hurley. There's so many. Ten City, and even you know, Tyree Cooper, Fast Eddie. You know, from us at that time being younger, that's when what we call hip house first came out, 88,
Yeah.
89.
Sure.
And so that was, you know, to a 13, 14-year-old kid at the time, that was super popular for us here in Chicago. So definitely, you know, those guys that were doing that. So, you know, I'm sure I'm missing some people, you know, Joe Smooth, Lil Lewis, of course. Lil
Mhm.
Lewis had amazing tracks back then. So, I mean, there just were so many really dope Chicago artists that really made that foundation of house. And I got to say, too, some of the early Detroit house that they called techno, like
Yeah.
Rhythm is Rhythm, Derek May, you know, that sort of stuff. We really played that right along with the Chicago house music, you know what I mean? So that was really my foundation before I even really started to dig deeper into disco from the 70s and all of that. It was the 80s, mid 80s to late 80s Chicago house music that was,
Yeah,
you know,
the
what I
true
fell in love with.
core, yeah, true core of the house music,
That's
really, what
yeah,
you
that's
just
what I
described there. Yeah.
that's my foundation for sure.
Mm. I think you have been very blessed to be able to live during that era and experience that vibe and all that cultural, you know, boom of the house music. And just like you said, uh, it wasn't first very clear. It was there was a lot of going on in the hip hop and a lot of going on with the house and everything. And in some occasions, they were fusing together. And I do also remember back in the days. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
tell you my age, though,
We never ask a lady their age.
but I do remember also certain tracks which were kind of like exploring both territories. Um, now, if you think about the DJing itself,
Hmm.
who were those DJs that were maybe your inspiration?
Well, you know, honestly, because I grew up where I did, right? And
Mm.
to give you a little bit about Chicago, so where I grew up was like maybe 45 minutes, an hour out of the city. And we kind of had our own little world, so to speak. You know what I mean? So, you know, I was too young. Like when a lot of the really famous clubs were going on in the 80s. It was a little before my time. And, I didn't turn 21 until 96. And so, like, our parties where we were like local. You know what I mean? I say that to say, sure, there were, big DJs like Farley Jack Master Funk, who was on the radio, really popular. A lot of different DJs, Hot Mix 5, even some of the younger to them like Fast Eddie, and then they all did guest mixes on the radio and all that. But it was local DJs that influenced me. Particularly, there's a guy named Rodney Blaylark, or DJ Rodney B, who was like the most popular DJ in Elgin. So when I was old enough to start going to like some of the local parties, we had basement parties. People
Oh
would
yeah.
have somebody, a relative, or their parents were out of town, or somebody's aunt let them get the house, and we would have basement parties because we really didn't have like official clubs where we were, except for that teen club that I mentioned. So anyway, Rodney B was like, he was the man, you know what I mean? And then there was another guy named Shannon Chambers, who I work with a lot now, that does, music with me and Terry Hunter on the label. He was older than me, and he was very influential too, because he was popular and known to be a really good DJ. So if I'm being honest, it was more like the local guys that I looked up to that were, you know, doing
Yeah.
stuff in my area more so than like the bigger guys in the city, because I wasn't going out to those parties. So people talk about Ron Hardy and Frankie Knuckles and Lil
Yeah.
Lewis and all that stuff. And like,
But
I can't lie and say those were my direct influences. I was influenced by people that were influenced by them, if that makes
yes,
sense.
yes,
So
it
I'm
does
still kind of a
in the
part of that
neighborhood.
tree, right? Exactly. But my direct influences were the guys that were like, and there was another guy named Andre Desjardins, who he's passed away now, but he was 10 years older than me, but he really took me under his wing when I was 15.
Mhm.
And he was a DJ and a producer also, and like I learned a ton from him. He was the first one that started taking me out to the city to go to imports and gramophone and buy records out. So those are my influences.
Beautifully summarized. And that got me then to the next question. You already mentioned about the music production. So, what was the journey into getting from listening and being inspired by those people's music, and then suddenly or eventually working with them? So, where did it all started? And
Well, that's a great question. And before I even answer that, let me also say, as the DJ influence is Sean Baldwin's name, because that's whose records, when I say I got that particular collection when I was young,
yeah,
that was who that DJ was. And he was a local DJ that had all this treasure trove of records that I got my hands on. And then once he finally came back from his stay away, he
mhm,
we became really good friends. But to answer your question, like I always say, I've been extremely blessed. For me to be a kid that came from the suburbs of Chicago and made my way up over time, I've been able to make friendships with a lot of the guys that are like really truly the pioneers of what it is that we do. I mean, people like Wayne Williams, Marshall Jefferson, Byron Stingley from 10 City. Like right now, the big Chosen Few Picnic and Festival is happening in Chicago next week,
yeah,
and creating the show tape for Curtis McLean, who sung "Move Your Body," and Harry Dennis, who did, Donnie, if people know that, and Time Marches On, and The Jungle. So, Vince Lawrence, I can name so many. Lil Lewis, Mike Dunn, all of these people now I have a personal relationship with, and have gotten some sort of mentorship from. I
yeah.
mean, in the grand scheme of things, in the younger generation and everything like that, I'm of the older generation of house. But to these guys who are the founders from the late '70s and into the early '80s, I'm the young guy.
You are the younger.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? So like, I've gotten a great mentorship, and I mean, of course, Terry Hunter, because people know him and I work together, but even he's, their generation is kind of like second or third house generation. The first generation would be like Vince Lawrence, Kirk Townsend, Wayne Williams, Alan King, Marshall Jefferson, Steve Hurley, all these people. Um, and so, yeah, like sometimes I have to pinch myself. Like it seems kind of surreal because and I tell these guys, like, I, in my heart, am still the 15-year-old kid coming home from school, going through these records, learning how to
Yeah.
mix, reading all the labels, and seeing their names. These guys were superheroes.
Yeah, being excited about all of that, which is beautiful, by the way. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, so it really is a blessing to like genuinely have a relationship with these guys at this point in life that like they laid the bricks for what it is that we do, and
I think
so
you said something very, very important, the importance of the mentorship.
yeah,
That
for
you have
sure.
had this opportunity to be mentored or learn by observing, by discussing, by working together
Yeah,
with them. This is something that I personally also believe very strongly about, that any kind of aspiring artist, producer, DJ, they would hugely benefit from the fact of connecting with somebody more experienced there in a field. And it is, you can really learn so much, especially the tactile information that you can't
yeah.
really get from anybody else, from these kind of people. So that was,
No,
I thought that was great point that you mentioned there.
it's true, and even learning about the history, you have
Yeah.
so many different, history depends on who you're asking,
Yes, 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 yes.
and so the truth typically kind of lies somewhere in between because people have different perspectives on
Mm,
a lot of different things as it relates to how did house music start or how did hip hop start or
true,
who did this first or
true.
who named it and all that.
Yeah.
And you know, if you get caught up in just reading the articles that journalists write, you're
Mhm.
only getting third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand information a lot of times, and you're getting narratives that get spread, and that those narratives might not be as accurate as you think they are. But if you go to the people that were really there and you get
Yeah.
that first hand information, you may still get some varying perspectives and guys don't agree on certain things, but at
Mm.
least you can kind of decipher for yourself what you know what I
Yeah.
mean by being closer to the
Exactly.
source.
Exactly. I think that is something that applies to everything when it comes to making, music production, DJing, being musician in general. That that you can always take opinions, influences, things, and so on, and then you summarize your own vision based on all of that info, so to say, and so on. So
Right.
that was very well put. So you have been inspired by and influenced by many people. You have been mentored and you have gathered information from various kind of artists, producers, and DJs. Now, at some point of your career, then you decided to run a label. Can you tell us a little bit about that part?
Yeah, I mean that was to be honest, like that same mentorship that I had when I was still in high school as a teenager came from Andre Desjardins. Like we always had that aspiration in the beginning to be independent, you know.
Mhm.
We didn't put any music out at that time. Like we had the right intentions, but it just never really came together. But then um, I got involved with some of my peers I grew up with because I was always I mean, from that generation, we loved hip hop and we loved house. Like I
Yeah.
would come home from school and watch the hip hop videos on TV every day, and was buying tapes and that sort of thing back then. So anyway, my guys that I grew up with who were MCs, we formed a group called Rec Center, and
Yeah.
so we had this hip hop group that was nine MCs and me as the DJ and producer, and we started putting out our own independent music in the 90s, 90, 96, 99. We put out a 12-inch single. We put out an album in 99 that actually the label in Berlin, HHV, just did a reissue of a couple years ago. So, and we were doing that all ourselves. Like, I was a young person that would go and research, like, okay, how do you get vinyl pressed up? How do you get cassettes manufactured? How do you get CDs? So, I always had that independent mindset, but it came from being a teenager and being around Andre and his brother Orphe. Um, so anyway, that was my foundation. And then fast forward to the present, I had been producing different hip hop and R&B artists. I had been engineering. I never really stopped DJing. I took breaks here and there, but I never stopped producing in the studio and that sort of thing. But I wasn't focused on making house music at the time. I have a really good friend named Julius the Mad Thinker that's from the same town as me, Elgin, and he was deeper, like 100% committed to house DJing, wanted to make records, and I would co-produce stuff with him and help him make records. But I was really focused on the hip hop and R&B artists that I was working on.
Mhm.
That kind of just came to a hilt for a variety of reasons over time, and I decided, you know what? I want to make a change in my career. I really want to just do what I want to do creatively, and that is house. And that took place, 2016 going into 2017. And that's when me and Terry Hunter really locked in together. We had been friends for a long time, and he encouraged me to do this 10 years prior to that, and I
Ah,
just didn't do it because I was too all over the place doing this other stuff. And so when I finally came to him, like, hey man, I've been making some house tracks. I want your opinion. I looked up to him and respected him and wanted to just get his stamp of approval. And that led to us really starting to work together. He already had a label called Teasbox.
mhm.
And from me and him, I started mixing records for him. He started putting records of mine out on Teasbox. And we just talked and talked and talked. And that led to him asking me to manage Teasbox for him. So that's
Okay.
how I got into the modern house music label world, I suppose. And then in 2019, me and Terry launched Mirrorball together, in which I'm a partner. So we've been doing both ever since, and it just that relationship has just been is extremely beneficial for me because Terry obviously is one of the kings of this thing. So for him to offer me that platform and open those doors for me was huge. And then obviously it's on me to do the work, but I try to reciprocate as much as possible by helping him with his stuff and
Yeah.
helping mix records that he's doing, and we just had a really good relationship, personally and professionally. So yeah, that's what's led me to this point of being involved in Mirrorball and Teasbox.
Yeah. Amazing music that you guys release, and we are just as a house community, I can speak on everybody's behalf that we are very happy that you have had that partnership throughout those years, which has then resulted those labels and those beautiful releases that you put to the world to enjoy.
Appreciate
Now,
that.
since this little podcast is also not only exploring each guest's house music journey, but we also would like to have a little bit, how would I say, educative element involved here.
Okay.
So, since you are very experienced DJ and artist and producer, and we talked about the mentorship,
Hmm.
now I would like to elaborate a little bit on that. If you think about nowadays the music culture, music scene, and the music business, what kind of um, advices, basic advices, would you give to any aspiring DJ slash producer?
Hmm. That's a great question. I mean, there's not just one route.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like what's right for one person is not necessarily what's right for the next person, and not all of us enjoy the same part of you know creating music, playing music. Um, I'm a firm believer in number one, respect the craft. Respect the craft. Be serious about developing your skills. I embrace technology. Um, I've been very vocal about my feelings about AI music creation. I've been kind of opposing some of it, but I'll clarify. And even as a DJ, we have these luxuries of the sync button and hot cue points, and
Yeah.
being able to read the BPM on the player, and all of these things that obviously we didn't have playing vinyl coming up and that sort of thing. And so I say that to say, embrace technology, learn the technology, learn the different things you can do with all of the abilities of these digital players and mixers and everything like that. But learn the fundamentals too. Learn the fundamentals. Learn to hear. Learn to blend without looking at the numbers. There's so many horror stories of people that don't know how to do that, that get up there in front of a big audience and something's not right with the way that the CDJ read your tempo on that track, and now you're lost because you don't know how to mix by ear and you're reliant on the numbers. I always say, like, you can't call yourself a mathematician and you have to use a calculator.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't know math.
Good analogy. Yeah. Or
You know what I'm
metaphor.
saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, use the technology. If you want to produce and you want to use AI to create parts or use it as a creative tool, fine. But learn music, learn some music theory, learn how to program drums yourself. Even if it's not AI, don't rely on going into Splice and having to get your drum loops and your rhythm percussion parts and everything like that from Splice, because you don't know how to tap it out and program it yourself. I'm
Yeah.
not saying don't use those things. I'm saying learn the fundamentals. So I think that would be one of the biggest things. I would couple that with bring something unique to the table. Bring we all play a lot of the same records, but we may play them differently. But we all have different choices too. And if you're a DJ that creates too, obviously you have the opportunity to bring your music into your set along with others. So I
Mhm.
think be unique. Bring something different to the table. Don't chase trends or try to follow somebody else too much, or play what you think the crowd, only what the crowd favorites are going to be. And it's kind of low hanging fruit. Bring something unique and creative to the table, and I think you'll form your own identity that way.
Yes. Very well put. And I can wholeheartedly agree with all of those kind of things. I was in several discussions with my guests. We have been talking about this kind of thing that you have to, or you don't have to, but it's so important to have the basics and the foundation there,
Right.
because that work that and that investment that you do in the beginning, it will carry you so much more further, um, whatever the area of your craft is. So there and it's kind of the skipping that part is like a I think it's like a building a house in a little bit, not so stable basis. It is
Right.
almost like a house of cards in one way, I would say,
Sure.
because when
Yeah,
you
I agree
are
with that.
when you are without those sync buttons or things like this, and you haven't developed the ear, which is the basic, you start from the ear, and
Right.
if you haven't didn't start it in the right way, it's most likely hindering your development and can backfire even. So
Totally
very,
agree.
very important point there. So I hope that our viewers, aspiring producers and DJs, really, really heard that. Now we have a few minutes left of this interview, and as I thought, when thinking of the questions what I'm going to ask from you, I said to myself that we could have several episodes on each section, but
Sure.
I'm going to just now um, ask you, what are the current projects you are working with, and what can we expect from Immaculate
Well,
in the near future?
the next thing that I have coming is I've released two singles from it so far, but I have an EP called Like Minds Volume 1. And the reason why I called it Like Minds is because the concept of the project is that there's 4 tracks on the EP, and each one of them is a collaboration with another producer that I have a relationship with and respect. And I want to make this the first of a series of these kind of collaborations, because I enjoy collaborating with other producers. So on this one, I have Terry Hunter, DJ Spen, CoFlow, and Shannon Chambers. and the Shannon Chambers collab features a vocalist named Stout. So I've released the single called "Go Deep" with Terry, and then "Turn It Over" with DJ Spen. And so at this point, I think it's going to be in August. I originally was shooting for July, but I think I'm going to push it back to August to release the EP as a whole with the other tracks. So that should come in August. That's going to be
Right.
the next release.
Wonderful.
I also I don't know if you would want me to say this or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. So Sean Christopher, who is a legendary singer from Chicago, has done a lot of big records, particularly in the '90s, and her and I collaborated on a reproduction of her "Don't Lose the Magic" that we put out on Seamus
Oh,
Haji's Big Love a couple years ago. We're in the beginning stages of doing a reproduction of her hit "Another Sleepless Night," which is a really big record in the early '90s. So that'll
mhm.
be a collab between me and Sean Christopher that will again come out on Seamus Haji's Big Love. So we're in the beginning stages of the creative with that. So I'm excited
Oh,
about that. Um, as far as Mirrorball is concerned, we got a bunch of new music in the pipeline coming out from Terry Hunter, variety of other artists. He's done this remix with DJ Jazzy Jeff's son Amir. That's incredible. Another song with a singer songwriter named Gwen Bunn that's getting ready to come out. Moonchild. Like Terry's got a lot of collabs that he's done that are really dope that we're going to be putting out on the label soon too. So, um, and man, I'm just constantly making music. I get my remix requests from other people that come in all the time, and I get those done and get them in the pipeline. And then I'm really trying to focus on creating more original music in addition to the remixes. So I got to keep it coming.
wow, wow, wow. I think it's truly exciting to wait for those releases and hear your new own productions as well. And just like I was saying you the other day about the beautiful remix that you put, or new version of Everybody Loves the Sunshine, for instance.
Oh,
I was
thank
just
you.
falling love with that, and I was playing it in my recent sets as well, and gonna play it next Saturday as well.
I appreciate it. Like that was
So
that was so
I love.
fun for me to work on because I'm just a huge Roy Ayers fan. I love Roy Ayers. I mean, who doesn't love that particular record? So as soon as Seamus hit me up to do that, my thought immediately was like, because I love Roy Ayers and Ubiquity so much, and if I was to say like what my favorite genre of dance music is, it would be jazz funk disco.
Ah,
And it's a hard thing to say like what's your favorite, but regardless, I love jazz funk and I love jazz funk disco. And so I thought to myself like, how can I take Everybody Loves the Sunshine, that's a slow ballad, and do it in the style as if Roy Ayers and Ubiquity would have made it disco. And
yeah.
and so that was just fun to work on. Like I was watching YouTube videos on how to make that synth sound that's in there, and just again, I'm a music nerd, so
Yes.
but that's what's fun to me. Some people, hey, God bless them, some people would rather type a prompt in the computer or whatever. I like the process of trying to figure out how to create these things and get with my musician friends that play and do it that way. That's what's fun for me.
I agree, and that's how you really learn about the creativity, because you
Yeah.
really, well, my opinion, when you just write the prompt, you really don't learn much except about the prompt writing.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
you're just focused on the result and not the process so much. Like I get it, people want to everything fast nowadays, fast
Mhm.
and easy and cheap, But listen, we all want to make money, but that I don't do what I do to do it fast and easy and cheap. Like I enjoy the process truly, and I enjoy learning and pushing myself to get better at. I don't feel like I've arrived at my destination. Like I have a whole lot to learn and areas to improve, and that's the journey of it.
Yeah. And I think you just said another gem right there, because it's all about the process. as well.
Right.
You know, I'm thinking of myself, my experiences from the artistry and as a vocalist and so on. And you actually, you know, the whole idea of the process is the whole thing about that
Right.
keeps us inspired and keeps the whole journey continuing. That you have that curiosity and you are always able to find some new exciting things and learn a little bit from here and fuse different genres, different sounds, listen old records from many years ago, decades ago, from decades ago, and get some, you know, spark of inspiration and fuse it maybe together with the current sound, just like you did now with the Roy Ayers song, and that makes it absolutely fun. So I think you said something very very beautiful there, very important thing for any one of us creating music
Sure.
and producing. So,
No, I appreciate that.
you're most welcome. If somebody wants to find you from social media, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram the most. My Instagram is at DJ Emmaculate, Emmaculate. I'm on Facebook also. I have an Immaculate page on Facebook, but usually I'm on my personal page, which is Eric Welton.
Mhm.
So you can find me there. I do have a TikTok. I'm not great
Uh-huh.
at using it. I've been trying to use it more frequently. That's also DJ Immaculate. I also have a website, immaculate.us. And if somebody wanted to reach out to me directly about doing some music together or bookings for DJing, it would be djimmaculate@gmail.com.
All right, so there you have it. Uh,
Yes.
Once again, thank you so much for sharing these insights and really very important gems with us and our audience here on your musical journey and kind of like an lessons that people can learn from, some educative perspective there. I truly appreciate that, and I appreciate you, of course, the music that you put to the world, sharing the good vibes, sharing all that beautiful house music with us. So, once again, straight from Helsinki to Chicago, thank you so
Yes.
much for this interview.
Well, thank you also for having me. It's a pleasure, and man, one of the reasons I feel like we do this is to share our music and to see other people enjoying it is success to me. You know, so I appreciate it.